Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast by fans for fans, where all the content is absolutely free. Coming to you in association with Forrest Precision Engineering. I'm your host tonight, Ryan Archer, and as always, we'd encourage you to get onto the Gersnet website and check out our forums for all your latest Rangers news and discussion. We're live tonight on the YouTube channel, and we would ask that you continue to share the pod on social media, spread the word, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Before I introduce my guests for tonight, I need to give another mention to our partners over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for a number of years, and we're delighted to have them supporting the podcast. If you want more information about them, please visit their website at www.forestprecisioneng.com. They also have a stunning executive lounge in the Ibrox main stand. And for more information on that, email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Right, now to bring in my guest, joining me tonight is Ross Bennett. Ross, how are you doing?
I'm very well, mate. Very well indeed. Been a good week. How are you?
Yeah, can't complain too much. Can't complain. Good European win midweek and a good win today. Also joining us is Colin Armstrong. Colin, how you doing?
Yeah, doing away, Brian. Thanks. Yeah, not a bad week football-wise. So yeah, quite happy.
Good. Colin, I'll come to you first. We'll obviously go over the game today. Pretty routine 4-0 victory over Ross County. We'll start with the team news. I kind of felt he went with a bit of a stronger team than I expected for a home game against a kind of relegation threatened side. Were you surprised not to see a couple of youngsters start, maybe Rice or Finlay Curtis?
No, I mean it was a sort of strongish side, but I wasn't surprised to not see those boys starting. I think, I think we were talking about this before we came on the other night. I think we can all accept that the league's gone, and I thought Ibrox felt a wee bit flat today. I think there's just that acceptance, a few empty seats, all that kind of stuff. So I think maybe given how disappointing the campaign has been in the league up until this point, we seem to be picking up a wee bit of form. I could understand maybe Clement thinking that he didn't want to threaten that in any way, and make sure we get the 3 points first and foremost, and then when the game's secure, introduce some of these younger boys into proceedings. So I wasn't overly surprised that he went with a stronger team. I mean, that said, every game over the last few weeks, because of the injury situation, when you look at the bench, the options on the bench are just like, we don't have any options on the bench. There's no other. The situation at Old Trafford a couple of weeks ago highlighted it. When we got a couple of injuries, we're relying on the boy Rice and the boy Curtis to come on and do a job for us. So I'm not surprised that he's sort of trying to stick with the strongest team he can field on a particular day, because it kind of feels for me at the moment that it's going to be a long end to the season. I think it's imperative that Clement kind of goes on a run from here on in. He's had some decent runs recently. We seem to have turned the corner a wee bit earlier on in the season, around about November time. Then we had that series of results over the Christmas period that just knocked us back again. I think the European stuff is also something that's kind of going in his favour. But I genuinely think to reconvince the doubters that are out there, because there's still plenty of them, and I have to say I'm still one of them, he has to go on a run between now and the end of the season. He has to, secure the Scottish Cup, and he has to take as much of the opportunity that's presented to him on the European side as possible. If he does all those three things, then I think some supporters might think that going into next season that it's something worth looking forward to, and that we're making progress. But I just feel that we're one bad result for all the doubters coming out again, and all the sort of the stuff that you're seeing on Twitter and all that kind of stuff after a bad result. So no, I can totally understand why he's going with slightly stronger teams here, even though it was Ross County and you're expected to win the game, because that's a banana skin in the waiting there. Even a draw and Twitter's a bin fire the night when it comes to Rangers. All the stuff's back out again. So no, I can understand why he's going with stronger players, a bit of experience in there, getting Suter back in the team, obviously giving him a start. I can understand why he's going down that road, because even although the ship is steadier at the moment than it has been throughout the season, I think it only takes one bad result and, we're into choppy waters again. So no, I can understand where he's coming from with his team selection.
Yeah, Ross, do you think that's in the manager's mind? He's just trying to name as strong a team as possible just now, just to build some momentum to try and, I guess, give us something to look forward to in terms of preparing for next season now?
Yeah, I think Phil knows that he's got to hold on to what he's got going in his advantage, and what's going in his advantage, his favour at the moment, is a nearly impeccable home record. So he's not going to take any chances again at Ibrox. One thing that Clement also does, and I've criticised him in the past for it, is that I feel he always looks at what's coming up, and I'm a big proponent of play your strongest team, focus on the game that's coming up now rather than looking ahead. But if Clement's looking ahead, what you'll see is that we've got a rare kind of midweek off, a midweek without a match, and then it's Queen's Park at home. So Queen's Park at home, that's your opportunity to have a slightly weakened or a slightly alternated squad. And in that sense, I can see why, having not played, Hadji, for example, midweek, having not played in Siala midweek because of the European squad registration, I kind of understood the lineup today. It's really similar to what Colin said. Colin's absolutely right. Clement is on very thin ice in terms of any goodwill. And actually, I'm not really on much social media anymore, but I do get a feeling that there is a bit more goodwill building and there is a bit more tolerance, and a lot of that is because you can see the stuff off the park is also kind of progressing from where it was a couple of months ago. But that goodwill and that tolerance and that backing, it's fragile. It's really fragile given where we've been. So no, I think I'm pleased he did. As I say, I want to see him play his strongest squad possible. For me, that almost was the strongest squad possible. I think there was an argument to rest Igaman, who I think looks really, really tired. I think that today was an opportunity to do that. I'll be surprised if he doesn't do that next weekend. But ultimately, I was really pleased today. We came out, we got the job done early. We looked good. They never had a sniff. I know they're a poor, poor team. But I was pleased. I was really pleased with what we saw.
Yeah, Colin, Ross mentioned there, coming out and getting the job done early. It was a pretty dominant first half display, I thought, and managed to get ourselves into a 3-0 lead. Was it just pleasing to see us make these types of games look routine after what was a tough European game midweek?
I mean, that's always the fear coming off the back of a European game, is that, the much fabled European hangover. I think at Ibrox, it's always slightly different, because our record is so good at Ibrox at the moment. And obviously you're playing Ross County, who are a team that are really, really struggling. So I never went there today expecting that European hangover to kick in. That said, I probably didn't expect us to be 3-0 up as quickly as we were. So yeah, it was good to see, but again, it just felt flat. Ibrox felt flat, even though it was a convincing performance. I heard a couple of folk round about me saying, oh, "Here we go." When it's gone, that's when they start turning in these types of performances. And again, that's a criticism we've sort of aimed at various squads in the past. So yeah, that's the sort of frustrating thing, and it just feels like, as Ross was sort of alluding to earlier on, there is a little bit more goodwill towards Clement. It's fragile, and yeah, so it was good to see them get the job done. But at the end of it, there's, it doesn't feel like it's contributing to anything. You're not coming out of the game going, well, that's us. We're 2 points ahead, or we're only a point behind, or you're coming out of the game and you're just heading home, because there is a feeling that the league's gone. So it was a good performance, and it's good to see that performances are improving and results are improving. But there's also that frustration that it feels like it's not going to count towards anything, because the early season form has done us. So as good as it was to see us perform the way we performed, it just felt a bit flat for me today, I must admit. It just felt like one of those games, like, let's just get it done. It's February, still pretty cold. You know, we've had a bit of a horrible Christmas period. We've dropped points. We've kind of, and yeah, it just feels like it's going to be a long end to the season for me. So mixed feelings for me today. I think that's probably the best way I could put it. You know, a good performance, good result, but just a feeling that it's too little, too late.
Yeah, definitely. Ross, do you share some of those criticisms in terms of we've seen this from this team in the past, that when the pressure's off and, you know, domestically, then they start to put in performances towards the back end of the season once the league is all but done? Is that fair to level that at this squad?
Yeah, possibly. In a way, we saw the kind of mirror of it last year, that the pressure was on as we reached the tail end of the season, and it crumbled and fell away. So maybe it is. You know, that being said, I think we have an opportunity now to try and look at things with a bit more optimism. You know, looking at the period that we've come through, the injuries that we've had, United last week or the week before, whenever it was, it typifies how dire our situation has been. I feel that we're finally in a place where we kind of know our best team, we know our best squad. We've got a couple of exciting youngsters on the fringes that we can, you know, if I'm really scrabbling looking for silver linings, we go, okay, well, we've got half a season now without really playing with any pressure on us to allow this group to settle. You know, it feels to me that the reason I feel a bit different today than how I did over the last, you know, out of the last 6 or 7 seasons, there was only one where I didn't kind of feel this way of looking ahead to the season after, because this one's gone. But I feel a little bit different now because I feel that our strategy is a little bit different. I do feel we've got a slightly more long-term look on things, and I feel that was borne out in the summer transfer window when we brought in young players, hungry players, and I feel that now, okay, there's nothing to play for, but let's try and find use for that. And one use for that is that these young players, for the Rafa Fernandez, the young boy that's just come in, Bailey Rice, Finlay Curtis, even the likes of Jeffy, Igaman, everyone else that's come in who's like under the age of 24, we have an opportunity to settle this team and have a team that builds into next season. Every other summer has been about recruiting urgently for now and hoping that it works. And I feel that now we're in a place where actually we're going into a new season, hopefully with a bit more of a settled squad. Now, of course, if our injury record keeps up, that doesn't matter because half of them will be out anyway, and we'll never get that settled squad that we're looking for. But yeah, there's nothing. Colin's right. There's nothing to play for now in a game like today. It's a case of kind of suffer and get through it. And I'm, you know, in a way, I'm fortunate. I wasn't at Ibrox today. I wasn't braving the cold and the rain. And actually, if my internet provider looks, they'll find I was in Spain temporarily this afternoon watching the game. So I have a slightly different perspective on it. I didn't, you know, trudge there and sit cold and bored ultimately for the second 45. But I think if we're looking for silver linings, the fact that we have that ability now to get this squad playing football and settled and going into next season, that's where I'd be looking.
Ross, is that what the remainder of this league season is all about for you? You know, the manager brought on, he kind of, I guess he's made a point of that by bringing on Bailey Rice for the full second half when we were 3-0 up. Is that the type of thing we need to see more of in the remaining league games in particular, is get ourselves into a good position and then let's start seeing what some of these youngsters can do to build into next season and beyond? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, my attitude, Bailey Rice coming on today, I think at halftime, good to see him get 45 minutes. I expect to see a lot more of that. In fact, my attitude to that is similar to my attitudes when I'm getting a Chinese takeaway. I want to see more rice. That's a really shy joke. But I think it's important. Colin and I started doing this podcast in I think in 2018, and since then,
and that's the worst pun you've ever came away with.
I'm just really proud of that. But I think in all of those 7 years, we have been talking for 7 years about how we don't produce enough out of the academy. And so here's an opportunity, you know, and all of the cliches about being a Rangers supporter and that being a heavy shirt, and that as soon as they make a stray pass or they miss a golden opportunity or they make a defensive error and a goal goes in, that we're on their backs. Well, if there is this opportunity now to play with a little bit less pressure, make the most of it. Play Bailey Rice, play Finlay Curtis, play Mason Munn, play whoever it is that could bridge that gap. We haven't seen enough out of the academy. It feels to me that over the last decade we've gone from like a young team playing in the B League, the Lowland League, through to no, we're not going to play fixtures anymore, through to we've got this games program, through to this, through to that, and we're kind of going up and down and in circles with it. Just get some of these boys playing men's football and playing in our first team, because at the moment it's surely not worth the money more than anything else. So yeah, good opportunity to finally get some of these kids in the team, see what we could do. I mean, Bailey Rice looks a good player. Unfortunately, I've said looks a good player about a few youngsters that have come through in the past, from Glenn Middleton through to Alex Lowry. But he looks good, and he certainly looks good enough to be facing some of the teams, and say nicely, some of the teams that we have to face in Scotland. So yeah, it's a positive.
Well, we're talking about kind of building for, you know, next season and beyond, and bringing through youngsters, and probably I think there's been a noticeable shift in our player profile since the summer, and that we're targeting younger players of the likes of Enciala and Igaman and Rafa Fernandez. How do we balance that with the constant need at Rangers to win now? Because it's all very well us sitting here now and saying Igmani looks a real player and NCL looks a real player, and we'll come on to talk about their performance today, but the reality is it's taken them until October, November, December to get into the team. We simply can't do that every season, can we?
No, and it's one of the concerns about the road. One of my concerns about the road that we're currently going down, you know, in terms of the profile of player that we're signing. I'm not against bringing in young players, not at all. I've always sort of felt, you know, if they're good enough, they're old enough, you know. And probably the biggest example of that in my lifetime is Barry Ferguson. You know, the minute that Barry Ferguson walked into that first team, you knew he was good enough to play for the Rangers. And my fear is the sort of winning mentality that is supposed to be passed down by the players that have been there and done it before, and I just don't think we have any of those players now. So if you're, you know, the young boys that are coming through, you know, like your Egamans and Enciala and Jeff Day and all these young boys, I just don't think there's anyone in that team at the moment they're looking to and learning from in terms of winning habits, in terms of, you know, seeing games out, getting over the line, and these games that are sticky games and campaigns that ultimately win you league titles. You know, I've been going to Ibrox for the last 40 odd year, and you know, I can't remember, I can't count how many times, sorry, I've been standing there, you know, in the 90th minute, 92nd minute, one each, thinking you've dropped 2 points, and someone, particularly under Walter Smith, you know what I mean, he always found a way to go over the line. Someone found a goal and just got you over the line, you know, because, you know, at the end of the day, football players are human beings. There are days they go out there, and even though they're a better, you know, individually and collectively than the team they're playing, sometimes they just have off days and it doesn't happen. And when that happens, you have to find a way to get over the line. And that's my fear with that team. The biggest accusation I could aim at this Rangers team at the moment is it's naive. I think it's a naive Rangers team. And I think we saw that down at Old Trafford. You know, Dessers gets that goal, an absolute peach goal. I mean, that is... if we'd have got a result that night, a draw, I mean, after Dessers scored, you know, part of me's thinking we might actually get a win here. You know, if we'd came away with that, with a draw from that game, I mean, what a way to do it with that goal. I mean, it's a touch of genius for Dessers, that goal. But we concede a really sloppy goal again at the other side, and just that inability to, you know, see games out and have that sort of, you know, street smart to do these things. I think Celtic have that in bucket loads. So when they're introducing young players to the team, these players are learning off guys that have been over the course time and time again how to win games, how to win trophies. I don't think we have enough experience in the team to pass down to the young boys. So my fear is, how do these boys get into winning habits when there isn't really anyone with any experience there that's been through that journey before to sort of pass that knowledge down? So that's my fear. I can understand why the club wants to go down a certain road in terms of the profile of players that they're signing. I get that. They wanted to reduce the wage bill. I get that. They wanted to reduce the age of the squad. Again, I totally get that. But as you say, Brian, there's expectation at Rangers. There's expectation to win trophies and to be successful. And if, even if you've got a sort of poorer team, that you'll at least challenge. And to do that, you need a certain type of player. And I think years ago, when Rangers had successful teams, young boys came in and learned how to do it. We've got young boys that are probably capable of winning trophies, but if we don't have guys that have been there and done it before to show them the way, then how are they going to learn? That's my fear. I understand why the club is doing what it's doing. It obviously has to, cut costs and all the rest of it in terms of what we're playing out for players, in terms of salaries and all the rest of it. But I just feel there's not enough experience in that team. And I just think we're a very, very naive team. And when you consider other things that are going on, when if you think about the red card at Tannadice and the sort of, sometimes players have to be just that little bit smarter. And if we don't have players that have that, then I just question whether this will get us to where we want to be, if I'm being honest. I fear bringing in young boys and there's no one there to pass down the knowledge about winning trophies. Where is that going to lead to in 2 or 3 years' time?
Yeah, I get that, Ross. If we briefly look back at Steven Gerrard's time at the club and how he kind of built towards 55, he brought in guys like Alan McGregor and Stephen Davis, who had been over the coast, who had won trophies, who's got that kind of mentality that Colin talks about, where they knew what it took to win a league title with Rangers. Are those the types of players with the type of mentality that we're missing? I'm not suggesting that we go back and get the band back together for 55 and bring in Ryan Kent or Alfredo Morelos or any of previous players, but is it players with that type of mentality that we maybe need to recruit alongside a younger profile player?
I think the difficult thing about that is, and the good thing for those players, they were Rangers fans. Alan McGregor grew up a Rangers fan. Stephen Davis was a Rangers fan. Scott Arfield was a Rangers fan. I understand the sentiment, but actually, who would we go and sign? Do we go and sign Kenny McLean? Because he's a Rangers fan and he'll understand the mentality, but that doesn't mean he's good enough. Russell Martin was the same. He's a Rangers fan, he understands the mentality, but he's still got to be good enough. And I don't know now, given everything that Rangers have been through in the last, since 2012, so the last 13 years, you've got a generation of teenage boys that then grow up into football players that weren't winning those titles in those years. So we haven't had those Rangers fans that have grown up with the club and then experienced winning titles and maybe gone elsewhere for us to bring back. That's a really strange consequence of everything I think that happened in 2012. So there aren't those players out there that have got that experience anymore. We have been so bereft of success for the last 13 years that I think it's actually had an impact on what Colin's saying there in terms of who can we bring in? Who do we go and sign that brings that? And I guess the answer to that for me is that you have them around the place, coaching or scouts or whatever it is, folk around the club that can do that, not necessarily on the pitch. I guess that's why you get Alec Ray in the backroom team. I guess that's why Gilmore's still there. But Gilmore, there we go. Could go and sign Billy Gilmore, but also the landscape's changed a wee bit in terms of the wages and would these players come to us? And so I will very respectfully disagree with Colin and say I don't see any other way here. I think we have to be signing these young boys, these youngsters who we can now build something for the future. And if that means trying to blood through some of the young lads from the academy, then great. If not, go out and get some of the best young talent from the continent. In Seattle, I think it fits that mark perfectly. Someone that's gone out and learned his trade in the academy at AC Milan, wanted to move somewhere for first team football, and we can give him that. That's, for me, actually, that's the kind of signing I want to see now. So I think we're in such a bizarre place now as a club and as a fan base, and we are so desperate to not be in this situation season after season after season. You know, for the records to be falling, for the number of trophies that the other club are winning, it's really, really disappointing and difficult and upsetting place to be. I don't know what the roadmap is out of it, but I can see why the club have gone with this strategy, and you know, I think in player trading and try and be a selling club. That's another thing that I've got a real bugbear about, is the whole selling club thing. Like, some of the players that Celtic move on for big money, like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 million quid, absolute dross. Like, failures of players that they've signed that they still move on for more than we can get for like our best players. So if that's, I believe that that's down to reputation, club reputation, and that Celtic have developed this reputation of selling good players. And I think that's where we need to be, because we're certainly not getting the Champions League money again this season, as far as I can tell. So we've got to try something, and it's got to tie together the business side. It's got to tie together the football side, and with those things in mind, I can see why this is the model we've gone for.
Yeah, Colin, I guess we're kind of made a start on this journey with trying to change the whole strategy around the club. When you look at players like Clinton Siala in particular, he got man of the match today. He was a player that when he came, we had a look at him in pre-season and we all kind of thought, bit ropey, definitely raw, not really ready. People had a look at him in the B team and were even writing him off in B team games, but he came out of the first team because of injuries. And to be honest, he looks to be getting better game on game. Is this just going to be another one of those examples where we, as Rangers fans, at times we write players off too quickly?
I mean, I think we can all agree that as a fan base, we are quite guilty. I mean, I think Alan McCoy used to say, you know, it wasn't one bad game, it was one missed chance, and that was how he was getting it stinking. Yeah, there is no doubt there's an element within the support who are too impatient and, you know, turn on the players too quickly, and write players off, you know, far too quickly. I think I mean, there's been players in the past that I thought got it tight for really unfairly. Charlie Adam was one of them. I thought Charlie Adam was a decent Rangers player. I thought he contributed quite a lot. Don't get me wrong, he could be stinking. You know, he could have really bad games, but Charlie Adam contributed, you know, a lot of goals and played well in a lot of games, and he used to get it stinking all the time. So as a fan base, we have that about us. You know, we have that ability just to, you know, write off players. We want success yesterday, and if players aren't delivering, then, you know, we can just write them off. There's that side of it, but there's also the other side of it. You know, if you're bringing in boys of the sort of profile that we're bringing in at the moment, and then it doesn't work, you know, after a year it's evident that it's not working, then, you know, the whole trading model collapses. You're then left with a young player that you're trying to offload, and you're then relying on, you know, the club to go out and recruit someone else to replace this player. So it's kind of, I agree with Ross, respectfully, by the way, that we're in a strange place at the moment, a really strange place, and I feel like we're in a strange place when I'm at the games now. It just, like, a lot of supporters are just, I don't want to say they're dismayed, but they're disillusioned. There's no doubt about it. I speak to a lot of supporters who say they're more disillusioned now than they were in 2012, because after all that business in 2012, you know, there was a bit of spirit, there was a bit of fire. You know, we felt we'd been mistreated, and so everyone sort of, you know, pulled together and got behind the club, and, you know, saw us back through the leagues and back through that journey. I think to go through that and then find ourselves where we are at the minute is hard for a lot of supporters. So I can understand why some are questioning the road that we're going down. I understand why we're going down that road. I just wonder if it will prove to be successful. That's my fear. So yeah, it's tricky. It's maybe another reason to question why we're bringing in so many young players, because the fan base can be so harsh at times. It's plenty of Rangers players have come out and said, it's a really heavy jersey to wear. If you're an eager man or whatever, 19, 20 years old, and you miss a chance, the weight of the sort of criticism that comes could crush you. I mean, I think you don't even need to look at young players to see examples of that. I think Lammers got crushed by that. You see Lammers go to Holland and he's actually flourishing, and he's actually a decent player. He's a good player, but that jersey was just too heavy for him. The expectation was just too heavy for him. So it comes down to this mentality thing again. I think it's a real. I don't want to go down the Alan Hansen road of saying you can't win anything with kids, because obviously you can. We've seen young teams in the past be successful, but I think it's a very hard thing to pull off at Rangers. I just think everything about that club is geared towards success. I think the supporters are a lot bit more impatient than some other fan bases, and if it's not working, then you'll soon see it. I think if we go into next season and have a similar scenario again, that come the first Old Firm game of the season, we're X amount of points behind Celtic and blah blah, then I think you'll start to see a real reaction then by the support. I just think, again, I understand why we're going down this road, but I think it's quite a high risk strategy, to be honest with you, because when I speak to supporters now, I just sense a lot of disillusionment. Some are quite like Ross. I mean, Ross seems to be, really happy with the road that we're going down at the moment, excited, thinks that the players that we're bringing in at the moment, and there's no reason to doubt that. They all look good. A lot of the young boys that have come in have looked good. But if they don't win trophies, if we go through this cycle again, that, come the next autumn, we're back to where we've been in the last 3 or 4 years, then I just don't want to imagine what the reaction will be from supporters. I really don't. So I get why the club's going down this road, but I think it's a risky strategy. I really do, Brian. I think it could blow up in the club's face again if we don't get it right. And another thing with young players, we're already seeing, there's talk of Chelsea in for Jeffy, there's talk of Everton sniffing about Eagleman. So you're already thinking, okay, we'll get money for them, but you're then having to go out and replace them. So it's not even as if, if we sign any young player that really does have potential and really does have talent, they're not going to be here long. We're really not going to get the benefit of them. The only benefit we'll get from them is if we get a decent transfer fee for them. So it's a kind of double-edged sword, and I don't want to be going to Ibrox year in, year out and just looking at a completely different team every season. You want to see a sort of a spinier team and players outside that coming and going, so to speak. I don't want to say, I quite like the look of this boy, he looks really good, and then a season later he's going for decent money because the club's wanting to sell and reinvest. You'll never get the opportunity to really have, McCoist was there for 15 years. He was there for a generation, a hero to that, for every Rangers fan who watched him from the minute he started his Rangers career to the minute he finished it. If we're not going to have that, if this is going to be a revolving door, bringing in young players, developing them, selling them a year down the line for profit, then how can you identify with a team? You know what I mean? Because it's just a revolving door of players coming in and out. So again, repeating myself, I understand why the club are going down this road, but I have my concerns about it. I think it could be successful, and I hope it's successful. I have to reiterate that. I do hope it's successful, but I genuinely think it could come at a high price. I think it's quite a high risk strategy that they're going down, and if they don't get it right, then this time next season, we're going to be having the same conversation, I think.
Ross, I'll be honest, I kind of feel the strategies, and I'm similar to Colin. I get why they're doing it, but to me it looks very much like a Borussia Dortmund model, where Borussia Dortmund bring in the brightest talent from academies in England that can't get a game, and they say to them, we'll give you your game, but we'll also sell you on and we'll make profit from you. And that's a great model, but at the same time, Borussia Dortmund win maybe one Bundesliga in every 5 years and not a lot else, and that's kind of my fear, is that that's kind of what that model does, is you'll make profit in the transfer window if you're bringing in these, brightest and best from other academies that can't get game time yet. You'll make, some money in the transfer market, but in terms of winning trophies, it's going to prove difficult. And I just don't know if the Rangers fans are ready for that type of model.
Yeah, I mean, I think my fear is that we have done the alternative. The alternative is sign established first team ready players that can come in and do a job and win us trophies. And we've done a very bad job of doing that. I mean, look at Michael Beale's summer transfer window when he kind of exclusively tried to sign first team ready players. And I think we're still feeling the effects of bringing the likes of Sam Lammers and Ben Davies and players like that. Rabbi Matondos and the like. So I actually don't see what alternative the club has. The landscape, the market now is so completely different. We are at a commercial disadvantage to Celtic. We need to try and make that up somehow. And I don't know. I don't know what the alternative is. Rangers needs to establish themselves, in my opinion, as a kind of centre of excellence in terms of developing bright, promising, talented young players that we can ship to England for 10 million at a time, and that we can then reinvest in our not just in players but infrastructure and the academy and facilities and all of that good stuff. And I absolutely understand. I hear what you're saying. Or are we going to win enough trophies doing that? We haven't won enough trophies, full stop, for 10 years. So I'm kind of at the point now where, and I don't know if I would say I'm really excited about it, or I'm really positive and optimistic about what the next 18 months have in store. But I don't see the alternative, because I think we've failed at the alternative, and I think if I didn't force myself to be optimistic about it, because Colin's right, by the way. If we're here, if in 9 months' time we're 10 points behind them, I think it's either going to be really, really nasty and ugly, or it's going to be really quiet and empty. And I don't know which is worse. By the way, we're supposed to be talking about a 4-0 win here. What the hell's happened?
That's true.
Well, to be fair to Brian, he did say it was hard to talk about a 4-0 victory against Ross County, so maybe a deeper dive required. I don't know.
I guess that just emphasises where we're at though in the season, that we're not really talking about a 4-0 win, because it doesn't really feel all that significant.
It matters, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And as much as we're talking about this transition to a new player trading model, we also have a couple of players that are our more experienced players that are currently on the last few months of their contract, and that being Yanis Hadji and John Souttar. Now, for me, I don't think we want to let either of them walk out for free, regardless of whether you think they're good enough to get Rangers to a title. But Colin, are you kind of the opinion that we need to stop this, letting assets walk out for nothing?
I mean, it's. I mean, how many has that been over the last few years? You know what I mean? It is. It's ridiculously bad how many players we've let walk out the door for next to nothing or nothing. I mean, in terms of the individuals concerned, I believe Hadji, there is an option to extend, but the club don't want to take it up because the agreed salary is too high, and that they're trying to get Hadji to negotiate, a lesser salary to take up that option. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I mean, Hadji. I like Hadji. I do. He's someone who tries to make things happen. He's a creative player. He's always trying to make things happen. And when you're that type of player, you are going to give the ball away. You're going to make mistakes. But he does kind of flatter to deceive at times, I think, Hadji. You know what I mean? He's 2-footed, has his moments. Obviously, got his 2 goals today. But overall, I would say in the time that Hadji's been at Rangers, he's probably underperformed. Okay, he had his injury, you know what I mean, which had an impact. As I said, I like him, but I just don't think he's the player that he thinks he is. If you know what I mean, I think he thinks he's a more important player to that squad than maybe what everyone else thinks. As for John Souttar, I like Souttar, but I think he's got a mistake in him, and he had one today. You know, in Seattle, I had to sort of cover up for him a wee bit. But you know, whether I think someone is good enough to beat Rangers or not is irrelevant. At the end of the day, we shouldn't be going into, you know, the last 6 months of their contract that they're in a position to walk out the door for nothing. I just think it's been a problem at the club for a long time, and it falls into this, you know, player trading model. You know, we've been doing the opposite of what we should have been doing. We've been buying high and letting them walk out the door for nothing, when we should be buying relatively low and selling for high. So, I mean, I won't be wailing at the walls if both players are not in Rangers' team next season. But yeah, if they're walking out the door for nothing again, then I mean that's really poor. I mean, I think the worst one was it last season when Morelos, Kamara, and Kent. You know, I think we got a combined like $2 million or something for all three of those players walking out the door. It's just, it's not good enough. You know what I mean? I think at one point under Steven Gerrard, you know, we had a few players there that we thought, you know, if we play this right, we'll get some money back in them. You know, obviously Morelos was one of them. Kamara, you know, there was 3 or 4 players there that you thought, we do this right, we'll get some money back, and we just never got the timing right at all. We just never got it right. It's as if we didn't have the belief that we could replace them, and therefore we were always a bit edgy about letting them go. And that's something, you know, we need to fix. We need to, once we know we're getting the optimum price for players, we need to be ruthless and just say, well, that's it. Thanks for your time. You can go, and we'll bring someone else in. And it's just not happened over the last few years. But you know, you're seeing. I would argue that that's part of the reason where we are in terms of signing younger players who are a bit cheaper, you know, and all that kind of thing, because we've spent so much money in the past and got nothing back. You know, that can't continue. You can't continue to chuck, you know, the money that we've been chucking, like $7 million in Ryan Kent, and he walks out the door for nothing. I mean, that I don't care what club you are. That's just not a sustainable business model. You can't do that. It's just, you know, there has to be money coming in, especially for, you know, we're not being successful and we're not getting access to the Champions League money as much as we would like. Then you need to be able to cover up that loss of income through saying, right, okay, it's time for you to go. We'll get 15 million for you. You can go now. We'll bring in somebody younger, cheaper, and develop them and sell them 2 or 3 years down the road. It's something that they're doing. You know, they've kind of got the best of both worlds at the moment. They're getting the Champions League money, plus, you know, they're selling players, you know, Kyogo for 10 million. Yeah, they're doing everything that we're not, and that's why we are where we are, I think.
Yeah. Ross, we spoke a lot about our transfer model this show now. It's transfer deadline day tomorrow. Are you hoping for a busy one from Rangers, or do you think it'll be on the quiet front?
I don't think it'll be silent, but I certainly don't think there's going to be masses happening. I wouldn't be surprised if we bring in one. I think we need at least one at the back. I think we could do with reinforcements all over the place. And you know, with the likes of Matondo going out on loan, there's been, I mean, depending on what you believe and what you read online, that's anywhere from sort of 15k a week to 40k a week in wages that have been freed up there. And I suspect it's the lower end of that. So there should be some money for reinvestment. Obviously, we bring in young Fernandez at the back. So maybe the manager thinks, well, if I can keep Suter fit and if I can keep Balogun fit, then we should have enough at the back. I'd like to see at least one come in, and I'd like to see it be a permanent signing. Don't really want another. Rangers seems to do quite well at bringing in loans for that last little period of the season. I'd rather see someone come in permanently. So, I suspect, you know, one of the rumours that's dragged on and on and on about the over the window is young Lyle Cameron over at Dundee. I I suspect that'll probably be a pre-contract situation rather than him coming in tomorrow. But I guess you never know. A club like Dundee shouldn't be too hard to put some money in front of them. But I understand he's one of their key players, and they're not going to want to let him go. So I suspect that we won't see him tomorrow. But if there's nobody, I'll be disappointed. In terms of outgoings, I still think there could be more to go out. I think if Tom Lawrence had been fit over the last 6 weeks or 8 weeks, I think he would undoubtedly have found a club to go to this window. But I think the fact that he's been out injured so much has probably hampered that. And I suspect he's a higher earner as well. And I think you can see the model again. What with Kieran Dowell going to Birmingham, with Rabbi Matondo going to Germany. Scored a great goal today, by the way. I don't know if you've seen that on his debut. Classic, isn't it? But I think you can see that the model in terms of outgoings that was started in the summer, in terms of the higher age and the higher wages going out the door, I think we've continued that this time around. And I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Lawrence moves on tomorrow. But I guess it's about a club taking on that risk with his injuries. That's a bit of a waffle to say. I have absolutely no insight. I don't know, but I would, as a fan, I want 10. I want 10 coming in, and I want them all to be superstars. I think realistically, I've tried to be very, very fair to Rangers tonight and very lenient and gentle. As a fan, I'm thinking, if you've got rid this window, you've got rid of Matondo and Dowell, who, Matondo allegedly on high wages. Dowell came up from England probably on pretty high wages. They've both gone on loan, so maybe the loan club isn't covering all of the wages, but I'd like to think there's some money to spend there. And if that doesn't get reinvested tomorrow, I'll be disappointed. I'll be frustrated. And I think the club would have to answer that question of, why is that money not being reinvested in the squad? We are still in 3 competitions. And there's no excuse for not bringing in anyone tomorrow, in my opinion. I'm sure we'll see at least one.
Yeah. Colin, if we look at January business as a whole, was this January window more about trimming some more off the wage bill, getting some players out the door that weren't part of the plans, than it was ever going to be about bringing players in for you?
I've got to be honest, I find the January window so uninspiring. it's just because you're sort of limited in what you can bring in, because if you're, when you consider, you've played half the season, some of these players have played in competitions that domestically, if you're signing someone from the same league, if they've played in any of the cup tournaments, you can't use them there. If you're signing someone from another league, if they've played in any European competitions, they're not eligible. So I just find January a bit of it's not a window I enjoy. I think, it seems pretty obvious to me that the main sort of thrust of the club at the moment is, to cut that wage bill, to get the high earners out the door, to get younger players in who are hungrier and cheaper to replace them. I think Tom Lawrence, as Ross has said, I think that could be possibly another one that might go tomorrow, because again, you would imagine he's at the sort of higher end of the spectrum, and he's another player that I just don't think it's worked. He's obviously another one that's had his injury situation, and that, to me, that's another reason to move him on, because we need more players who are robust and can handle this league. The amount of players that are just dropping like flies, it's just not good enough. You can't have as many players out through injury as we've had over the last however long. So I think Tom Lawrence would be a good one to get out. In terms of coming in, I'm actually slightly disagree with Ross. I think we're actually pretty covered now at centre half. I was quite surprised at how well Tav performed there. So he sort of adds to the options, and obviously you've got Sterling, who's out at the moment, who can provide us cover there as well. So when I look at the centre half position, I think we're actually not too bad there. I wouldn't mind someone sort of middle to front. I still think that left wing causes us issues. I don't think Bajrami's really made it his own. I like Bajrami, but I want more from him. I think you see moments of what he's got. He just needs to do it more consistently. And and maybe another midfielder, because the one thing that annoys me about this Rangers team at the moment is we're capable of controlling games, but not for long periods of time. We control games, and then we just, after 20 minutes, lose control of the game, and all of a sudden we're chasing it, and we look like we're under P a little. So I would just like to see, someone in there that would be able to just settle things down a little bit and help us control games a wee bit more when when we're playing teams. I mean, I know I'm probably in the minority here. I would still take Shankland. I just think he would score goals for Rangers in this league, and I think he could do it in a cheaper way than what we have. But whether anything is possible happen there, because obviously I don't think we're looking to get offload Dessers at the moment because he's playing so well. Obviously, you're not going to get rid of Egerman, and Danilo, he's injured, so I don't think there's any chance to him getting out the door tomorrow. So probably something that's not going to happen. But I would certainly take Shankland. There's no doubt about it. But if you were asking me where do I think we need to bring players in tomorrow, I would sort of say midfield and that left wing area.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting day. Colin, before we finish up, I just wanted a quick chat on the kind of the manager situation, I guess. It felt like during the Christmas period it was a pretty kind of dangerous territory for him in terms of his position. Is the European result in midweek, the slight upturn in form domestically in terms of maybe Dundee United away last weekend, and today was a good victory. Does it feel like that kind of immediate pressures off of him, that we're all kind of, some maybe reluctantly, than others, bought into the fact that he's here for the rest of the season, and then we kind of see what we can do for the remainder of this season, and then reassess it in the summer?
I mean, I think regardless of what supporters think, I think he's here till the end of the season at least. I don't think the club are in any way minded of moving him on. The European, I mean, it feels like it's been a bit of for a game where we're talking about a 4-0 it feels like it's been a bit negative, but I think that's just a sign of where we are. However, looking at the more sort of positive stuff, the European run has been, again, superb. To get to the last 16, to finish in that top 8, when you consider how many teams in that top 8 we've played, we've done superbly well. And I think that's maybe part of the frustration with supporters, is the fact that we have competed so well in Europe. We have looked, a good team, especially on the road. We've looked a really good side at times in Europe, and it's the fact that we can't match that domestically is a bit frustrating. So I think that's bought Clement a bit of time. I just think he needs to go on a run domestically, and I think the Scottish Cup as well. He needs to get that, because at the end of the day, they won the League Cup on penalties. They're well on the road to another title, so they're 2/3 of the way to another treble. So Rangers either have to ensure Celtic don't win it by knocking them out in the early rounds if we get them, or if we meet them in the final, we have to beat them in the final. We have to make sure that they don't get another treble. If Clement does that, then I think he gets a bit more support next season. I think supporters will maybe start to come round to the idea again. But yeah, he's in. It feels like really strange territory. I've never known a manager who has been so under pressure but is so safe in his job, if you know what I mean. I think the last time I can remember a manager like that was John Gregg. John Gregg was Rangers manager for 5-6 years and never won a league title. And every year when he didn't win a league title, it never felt like his job was particularly under threat. And it kind of feels like that with Clement at the moment. And maybe that's the reason why supporters are a bit sort of flummoxed and a bit all over the shop. It's just a strange situation to be in when your club is, Rangers are so far behind Celtic in the league, 10 points behind or whatever it is. The league's done. You've had a really poor season, and you've had all the stuff. I don't think we can write off all the shenanigans with Ibrox at the start of the season as well. I mean, the season just got off to a horrific start, full stop. On and off the park, and I think that's just added to the whole feeling that it's been a really, really poor campaign. So yeah, it just feels it's weird. It's just a really strange scenario to have a manager in the sort of situation that he's in, but he's as safe as houses, that he's not going to go anywhere in the next however long. So yeah, we just need see how we get on from here on in. You know, I think, as I said, he needs a run domestically. He needs to go on a run in the league. That the away form and the league campaign has been nowhere near good enough. That has to change. I think Europe's a huge opportunity for him. You know, if we get a wee bit of the rub of the green, we could be looking at another quarter final in a European competition. And I always think once you get to the quarterfinals, you never know where you're going to end up. You know what I mean? It's on then. That's when the belief really starts to kick in. You're like, my God, we're in the quarterfinals. So, you know, if he negotiates the next tie in Europe, then the place lifts again. You know what I mean? So there are opportunities there for him. You know, and there are opportunities there for him to show that this strategy and road that he's taken us on could work. It's just up to him and the players to try and make sure that happens.
Yeah, Ross, where are you at with the kind of situation around the manager? Have you seen enough in recent weeks to kind of give you belief for the remainder of this season and into next?
I've seen enough. I think I've seen enough when he's got his strongest team on the park. I think you can sort of see the team that we're trying to be. I feel that he's been massively hampered by injuries. I think some decision making in the past has been poor. You know, as it was a game. Who was it? Was it Motherwell that we were playing? It was a Motherwell or St Mirren that we were playing in the lead up before we played Celtic in the New Year's game, and we lost. I think we drew against Motherwell and then we lost against St Mirren in the lead up to that Old Firm. And I remember saying on this podcast that it just feels like he's looking at the Celtic game and he's not looking at winning these two games here. And so I think there have been times when he's done that and he's taken his eye off the ball when he's made bad decisions. Now, that being said, I think when he gets his full strength squad on the team on the park, I think we look like a good team. I think we've got good players. I don't think we've necessarily got better players all over the park than Celtic do, but I think we've got good players. Colin's right though. Unless he makes a total hash of it over the next 3 months, he'll be in the job. And I actually think he's kind of safe until October time. You know, and I think in October time, people take stock and go, right, are we in with a chance of winning the league this season? Do we need to make a change now to save it? Or are we ahead? And are we, you know, because I think the form he showed when he came into the job, that shouldn't be forgotten as well. That incredible run we went on to put us top of the league before it all fell apart. So, you know, and then you come back to all the other cliches of actually with this group of players, is anyone going to do any better with the injuries that he's had, with what he's had available to him, with the squad that he inherited, with those players on those wages and the turnover that he's had to go through? Could anyone have done any better? I don't know. I really don't know. So I'm comfortable. Actually, I am comfortable, and I think I said to a mate of mine the other day that 6 weeks ago, 80% of our fan base wanted him out, and I don't think that's the case today. I think people are willing to give him time and willing to see what happens because things do look a little bit better. You know, our first half today, we were. And I know it's only Ross County. We were good. We were really good. There's been some really good performances this year. There've been some absolutely awful ones, but there have been good performances, and I just feel that we need stability as a club. The instability that we've been through over the last 15 years has been horrendous. I think we need a bit of stability. You know, Colin mentioned there, John Gregg was manager of Rangers for 5 years without winning the league. That doesn't happen today. The landscape is completely different. But, you know, problem that I've got and that other Rangers fans have got is that we're now kind of in this weird point where we're kind of misty-eyed looking back at Giovanni Van Bronckhorst going, we never should have got rid of Gio. Now, whether that's right or wrong, if we get rid of Clement today, that will be exactly how we feel in 18 months, in my opinion, when we've ripped everything up and we've started again and a new manager's come in and demanded that half those players move out and he brings in his own lot and his own backroom team. And I don't like what we're doing with the sports science here, and we'll change the canteen and all the rest of it. I don't see the value in that now. Let's stick to a strategy. Have I seen enough from the manager? Might get slaughtered for saying it, but yes, I have. I think that with this manager, the good outweighs the bad, and we very, very quickly forgot the good, and we won't forget the bad that quickly. But for me, I think it does. And I think he has the right to some time to implement what he needs to implement. We, again, I remember being on this podcast at the time that he was appointed, and everyone saying it's a rebuild, it's 4 or 5 windows. We just don't seem to have the stomach to actually sit through those 4 or 5 windows. So let's try it. Let's do it. It genuinely could all go to shit. There's not much else to say, but for me, I'll stick at it.
Definitely feels like there's been a sea change in the manager over here for the foreseeable. Come what may. Right, I think it's time to call it there. All that's left for me to do is thank my guests. Ross, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Colin, thanks as always.
Thank you, Brian. Cheers.
Thank you. As well as being live tonight, the show will be available on all podcasting platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Acast, and Stitcher. We'll be back on Friday to look ahead to a Scottish Cup match against Queen's Park at Ibrox. Until next time, bye for now.